Well, how are you doing? Okay, the title of this video will be Globe Lie-Ometry. Um, what you're seeing on screen now doesn't make any sense right now, but it makes sense in a few minutes. I'll try and keep this video as short and concise as possible, but I have to go through 3 or 4 topics. A few nights ago on the Try Thinking show, on one of the Friday shows, Charles Flatter Math came on to talk to Bev and whoever else is there, Paper, whoever. And like, I'm going to link that show in the description here, and this show is a great example of why I don't debate these people or conversate with these people unless I'm paid my fee of €5,000 for a 2 hour debate or €3,000 for a 1 hour debate, because I won't have my time wasted by frauds like Charles Flat Earth Math. Now, Charles claim is using the term flat earth math as some kind of way for, I don't know how long. I'm around since 2015. He's around longer than I am, supposedly. So he's using that term for I don't know how long as some kind of way to troll flat earthers, I think, or in some way. But Charles claims to be a high school level maths and geometry teacher. So if he's teaching maths and geometry, right, why would the earth being either a horizontal plane, a sphere, a triangle, a square, how is that going to change maths? That won't change what maths is. Maths is still going to be maths. It has nothing to do with whether the earth has a shape or is flat. Do you know what I mean? Nothing to do with that. You know, whether flat is not a shape, other things are shapes. You know, I mean, that doesn't change maths. Maths is still going to be maths. So I don't see how somebody who's a geometry and maths teacher could use the logic of saying, call himself flat earth math as some kind of troll. How is that a troll? It shows that you don't understand that simple fact. I don't know what's going on in the guy's head. He's a crazy guy. But he made some claims either way. Let's move on from that. He made some claims on the Try Thinking show. And I'm going to go through them now. First claim he made, or we'll start with this one. He claimed a couple of things. He claimed that in GeoGebra, right, that if you make a sphere and you take, let's just say, a zenith from the center point of that sphere, which I have here on this little thin blue line, and you make an angle with that and the surface of the sphere, but you're zoomed really far in GeoGebra, that GeoGebra will use he employed that GeoGebra would use this slightly curved surface here, right? This is what he employed, right? Now, I know this is a load of rubbish because I showed it some time back. So here I'm going to show it even more, right? Now, what we have here is I've made the angle. So this is 89.53, right? The angle is between this line here. I put in these two points and a point on this up higher on this zenith here, and I made an angle, and the angle is 89.53 at the moment, so it's a very tight angle, right? And what I did is I put a line between them. After I'd made the angle, I put a line between them, and I colored it red, and a line here, this angle line here, again between this dot or this point and the point on this zenith here, and I colored that one red as well. Now I colored the globe here, which is in black. I colored that black. I'm just going to open up settings just to show, right? And I serrated the surface. So if I go into style and I go to line style and I bring it back to straight line, right? You can still see that the angle here, which I made in honeycomb, is going past the black here. I can't actually zoom in any further without, if I try to zoom in now, what will happen further? It'll probably just jump around on the screen because I'm zoomed in so much. I'm zoomed in as far as I can zoom in with GeoGebra. So I'm going to make that a serrated edge. By making it a serrated edge, you'll be able to more clearly see that, right, that I'll make it, sorry, make the serration even bigger. You can see that this honeycomb portion here is going down past what would be the top of these serrated, let's say, blocks, and to the red line, right? And it's not doing that because I put the line in. It's doing that because it can't it can't reference an angle if it's to a surface, if it's not, to a surface that is curved. It can't do that. It can't reference the angle to a curved surface. It can't use a curved surface. That's it. It's just not possible. Like, and Charles tried to say that he tried to imply that if you zoomed in really far on GeoGebra, that GeoGebra would use if you have a sphere, if you zoomed in really really far to the surface, the GeoGebra would make an angle with the surface of the sphere. But I'm just showing here it won't. It requires the line that it makes an angle to be straight. Even though I put in the red line, these two red lines afterwards, the point is that the angle itself requires two straight lines. So it wouldn't make a difference whether I put it here or put it here. I put it onto this one here and put a point up here. It's still going to reference this red line and not this black serrated edge of the globe. It won't reference that. That's the point. It just like in CAD, I showed a few weeks ago in another video that I showed Rob Durham's video where CAD would not make an angle using a curved surface. Well, GeoGebra is exactly the same, and I showed that a few weeks ago as well in the same video. GeoGebra will not reference an angle using a curved surface. So, like, would Charles flat earth math, right? Globe earth math is what he really is, because he makes up crazy things like people on that side do. Would he teach the children he teaches? Would he teach them that you can use a curved surface as one line of an angle if you just zoom in really far? I mean, would he teach this? This is crazy. Like, how can this guy be teaching kids geometry and maths when he's teaching them stuff like that? I mean, that's crazy. I mean, to be honest with you, if his supervisors like knew that he was teaching stuff like that to young people, I mean, their parents would be in an uproar. Like, he'd be suspended or something. That's crazy to think that you could teach kids that. I mean, those kids could bring him to court many years later. One of those kids could bring him to court in years to come because he was teaching them a load of lies. The guy is lying to children. That's what he's doing. So I'm just going to show something here, right? I'm going to zoom out, right? No matter how far out I zoom, you can still see that the orange honeycomb of the angle line is not touching the black, it's touching the red. And the black, the serrated black, it's the top of the black that's the surface of the sphere. They took out these little blocks there, right? And I show that again, say, just so there's no argument there. So style, and I just use line. So there you go. As you can see, the angle is using the straight lines, not the curved surface of the sphere, right? So let's go out again, right? And I'm going to pull this back. So this is all working on, so this point is working off of the surface of the sphere, right? Right? Zoom out. You see how far I'm zoomed in, right? Right? So that's how far I'm zoomed in. Look at how far I have to be zoomed in just to start doing this. Zoom out. At no time whatsoever is GeoGebra referencing the surface of that sphere for that angle. At no time whatsoever is GeoGebra referencing that. Look, GeoGebra is not referencing that whatsoever. And if I keep on going, what's going to happen is both lines are going to start going down in past the surface of the sphere. So I just move this over, keep it going. As you can see, now both lines have gone down into the surface of the sphere. So Charles Flat Earth Math is teaching young people that this surface here can be used as one line of an angle. And this guy is supposed to be teaching high school level in the US, high school level geometry and mathematics. I mean, if I was the parent of one of those children, that guy would be in court so fast, teaching absolute rubbish. That's what he's teaching. So let's move on. The next claim of Charles. Okay. Next claim, he claimed that vertical angles, zenith angles, don't require a horizontal, right? You just need one vertical and nothing else. So that would mean that to take a zenith angle, it would mean the angle is based on nothing, because angles have to be based on something. And the zenith angle, and like the elevation angle and the depression angle, they're all based on a horizontal and a vertical to create 90 degrees. So you can be plus or minus 90. So vertical angle, also known as the zenith angle, it is the angle measured from directly above the zenith. So perfectly horizontal, right, will have a vertical angle of 90 degrees. If you are looking to somewhere higher, the vertical angle will be less than 90 degrees, while looking further down will be greater than 90 degrees. So here we have zenith, right, horizontal line, right, you have the plumb bob theodolite, right. Here you have plus, which is above the horizontal line, elevation angles, and minus, right, which are depression angles, right. And the zenith angle here will will be determined on how much, right, above the horizontal it is or below the horizontal it is, as it requires, you can't have a vertical without a horizontal. You can't have a horizontal without a vertical. A vertical will always automatically create a horizontal. A horizontal will always automatically create a vertical. One creates the other, as they're two in the same. They're two opposite orientations or different orientations, but they work hand in hand. So if you make a vertical with a plumb bob, you have instantaneously created a horizontal. If you create a horizontal with an auto level, you've instantaneously created a vertical, right? So the zenith angle can go from 0 here down to 90 or past 90, right? And just to show that, we did this. So you have your vertical zenith here and your horizontal, right? And your plumb bob down here is your nether, right? Or nadir. Okay. So for the elevation angle, you have 90 here, and that'll come down to 0 here in the red, or 90 here will come down to 0 here, right? But for the zenith, you have 0 instead of 90 at your zenith, and for the zenith angle, that comes down to 90. You see the blue either side, right? Or it goes below 90, right? Below 90. And a depression angle obviously is going to be from 0 down, right? So 0 down to 90 for the depression angle. So you can't do any of this. Theodolites don't work. Auto levels don't work. Um, Sextants don't work without a vertical and a horizontal. You can't have one without the other. Right? It doesn't work. You can't create a horizontal without automatically creating a vertical. You can't create a vertical without automatically creating a horizontal. And Charles tried to claim that for a zenith angle, you don't need a horizontal. It doesn't matter what Charles says. The vertical creates the horizontal, and you can't take an angle measurement without referencing the horizontal, because it'll be referenced between the vertical and the horizontal. All angles, right, are referenced between those 2 points, between or past those 2 points, right? That's where it's going to be. So if you're going to take an elevation angle that went that went up to 90 here, right, and you went past that, then it would be more than 90, right? Or from an elevation angle or a depression angle went from 0 down to here, right? So you have 0 down to 90, and zenith angle then is going to start at 0 and it's going to go to 90. Do you understand? That's what's going to happen. You can't have a zenith, which is a vertical, without a horizontal. Every time you create a horizontal, you create a vertical. Every time you create a vertical, you create a horizontal. They are one and the same. You can't create one and exclude the other. But Charles Globe Earth math is trying to teach people and claim and teach young kids that you don't need a horizontal for a zenith angle. Imagine he might be teaching someone's children right now, teaching them that rubbish. That's complete and utter lies, and he knows it. The man is a total liar, and he knows he is. He knows he's a liar. He was caught out for lying in the past. He spent 2 hours not admitting to needing a radius when he was debating Nathan. A lot of people got on Nathan's back about it. about it because they didn't understand. Nathan was holding him to task. He wasn't interested in red herrings. He wasn't interested in anything else. Charles would not admit he needs a radius to make any claims concerning a sphere. He needs a radius and he needs a radius measurement. But Charles would not admit it. Charles is not an honest guy and he's teaching young people rubbish. Literally rubbish. As I said, if my kid was in his class and I found out about that, he would be going to court straight away. I wouldn't care, not even one iota. Straight to court. The school would be going to court. And I tell you, if I found out that he was teaching this stuff to kids, and I was his supervisor, he'd be in suspension straight away. I wouldn't have any mercy on him. Not even one little bit of mercy. He doesn't deserve it. He's telling lies to people and teaching lies to young kids. If he's not teaching them this, but he's claiming it outside of that, if he's claiming this on the internet, but he's not teaching it to the high school kids, why is he not teaching it to the high school kids? If he's claiming it on the internet, but he won't teach it to the high school kids, then that means he's lying because he knows it's not true. Because if it was true, if he believed it was true, he would teach it to the high school kids. If he is teaching it to the high school kids, then he's teaching them lies. He's teaching them crazy nonsense that isn't true. So either way, he's either crazy or he's dishonest, or both. Because there's no way around that. You can't ignore the horizontal, just like you can't ignore the vertical. Okay, next point was he wanted to claim that this is something that is complete nonsense. I destroyed years ago, and I destroyed it in a different way only a few months ago. And it was that diverging zeniths can be measured, right? This is complete and utter rubbish. Now, I made a video 5-6 months ago on this topic concerning Jesse Kozlowski, Larry Scott, and Blue Marble Science, who were all frauds. And I prove within the video how they're all frauds. And I show what they did, right? I show exactly what Kozlowski and Scott did and what Blue Marble Science promoted as fact. And Blue Marble Science is an ex-engineer. There's no way that he wouldn't spot what they did. So that means he's complicit. He's part of it. There's no way around that. So if you're claiming that diverging zeniths can be measured or exist, right, then you're claiming that rise over run is not real, because rise over run is how they measure slope in surveying, right? So in math, slope is the ratio of the vertical and horizontal. So vertical and horizontal changes between 2 points on the surface of a line. The vertical change between 2 points is called a rise, and the horizontal change is called a run. Okay, so here's rise, run, right? The distance horizontal, right? Rise is vertical, right? Now the problem is, right? That means they have to always have an exact vertical because they have to use an exact horizontal. That means they have to have an exact horizontal because they're using an exact vertical. So perpendicular 90 degrees, they always have to be 90 degrees, right? So this is a right angle triangle, right? That means it has to have an exact horizontal and exact vertical. It can't have a vertical that's diverging a bit, or horizontal that's slightly not horizontal because it's divergent. If the vertical diverges, then the horizontal is not horizontal. It's that simple. You can't have one diverging when the other one is not diverging. You can't have that. Now, most of our opposition will claim stupid stuff like horizontal is only a point. No, a point is a point. Horizontal is a line, which is a series of points. Series of points conjoined. It is not a point. A point is a point, and that is not anything, right? A horizontal is a line, right? A vertical is a line, just like a vertical is not a point. Because to say a horizontal is a point is to say that the vertical is a point. Now, if you're using a sphere and you're trying to claim that every horizontal or every vertical, right, has a tangent plane that's horizontal, well, that's false. You can't have one horizontal being at a different angle to another horizontal, because they're going to claim then that the next vertical will be at a slightly deviated angle from this horizontal, and so that means that from this vertical. So that means that the horizontals have to be deviated. You can't deviate one without deviating the other. So that would mean there is no such thing as horizontal. It can't exist on a sphere. And vertical can't exist on a sphere because vertical creates horizontal. You can call it a zenith, but it's not. You can't call it a vertical because a vertical is not going to be vertical unless it's meeting a horizontal at a perpendicular 90 degrees. And you can't have another horizontal and another vertical being at a different angle to those two. You can't have another one over here to the right or to the left. It's going to be at a different angle to these to this perpendicular here. All perpendiculars must be parallel to each other. There's no way around it, right? So here we have, right, you have leveling staff, right, you have the horizontal, right, levels, this is a dumpy level, whatever. You can use order levels, right, same thing. So this is differential leveling. All those verticals, right, see those horizontals, they all have to be parallel to each other. So they're all one horizontal, right? They might be at different elevations, but they're the same thing. And if they have to be parallel to each other, then all the verticals must be parallel to each other. And so, how can they claim that the verticals will be diverging? If they're diverging, that means the horizontals are diverging, which means there is no way any of this would work because all the distances along and all the ratios of slope would be wrong. The only way to have correct rate of slope, right, the correct ratio, is if you're using parallel verticals and parallel horizontals. You can't have it any other way. There is no other way for it to work. Basically, you can take all those verticals down to the same elevation, and bring all the horizontals down to the same elevation, and all those verticals will all be vertical 90-degree perpendiculars from that one horizontal. See, within the globe mind, there can only be one horizontal and one vertical from that horizontal. You can't have two verticals to a horizontal within their mind. So they can't have these two verticals being parallel to this horizontal. You can only have one vertical being perpendicular. Sorry, you can only have one vertical being perpendicular to a horizontal in their mind. You can't have two. So how could you not have two? In reality, you have to you all all like a horizontal can stretch for an infinite distance. That means every vertical, right, from that has to be a 90-degree angle to that horizontal, which means it has to be parallel to every other vertical. There's no way around it. It couldn't be any simpler. But they can't have that. They can't have two verticals being both being perpendicular to one horizontal. Because that would mean they only have, because if they have one vertical that's perpendicular to the horizontal, then the other line they're calling a vertical can't be a vertical because it's not perpendicular to the horizontal. It's just crazy. It can't work. It doesn't work. It's impossible. That's the problem. It's actually impossible. It's not like you can even imagine it. You can't imagine it. You can't even imagine it happening because the vertical that isn't perpendicular to the horizontal is not a vertical. That's the problem. Here we have again, so as you can see here, there's a horizontal going all the way along here, right? As the same elevation, that horizontal, let's just say, right? All those, verticals must be parallel to that horizontal. But that can't happen in the globe mind. These things aren't real in the globe mind. That's the problem. They can't have all those verticals being parallel to that one horizontal. Only one of these verticals can be parallel to the horizontal. Perpendicular. Sorry, not parallel, but perpendicular to the horizontal. Right? That means the other verticals aren't verticals. They have because they have to diverge from this. Let's say if this vertical is parallel or perpendicular to this horizontal, that means the other verticals aren't verticals. That's what they have to claim because they can only claim one vertical to one horizontal. And they can't even define, and you can't define horizontal if what you're calling horizontal somewhere else is at a different angle, because angles are determined from horizontal and vertical. Like if you were talking about pitch, the pitch of an aircraft or anything is all derived from its pitch in relation to horizontal. That's what pitch is from, is in reference to. So how many degrees below or above horizontal, right? So how can you have two horizontals at different angles to each other? You can't. it's impossible. You can't have two horizontals at different angles. And so consequently, you can't have verticals that are diverging. It's impossible. None of this is possible. It's crazy to think that people think this is possible, but it's impossible. In reality, it's not possible. Only crazy people and lawyers believe that this is possible. Crazy people believe it's possible. Lawyers believe it's possible to trick people. That's the problem. And lawyers are right. You can. The crazy people are wrong, but the lawyers are right. You can trick people because look at all the people that believe it's actually real. Here we have, right, parallel verticals with horizontals going around in a square, right, or a rectangle. Let's say either way, right. The point is that you can do differential leveling in a square or a rectangle. How can you have, right? How can you have any of these verticals not being parallel to the other vertical? How is any of this going to work? It's not going to work. None of this is going to work. The distances in the horizontal will be wrong because you won't be using verticals. You'll be, you know what I mean? Even you couldn't, and this thing about it, you can't not use verticals, correct verticals, because you're everything you do, all your measurements at the end of the day, when you go back and you look at all the measurements you took, when you're a surveying, you're going to straight away all those measurements. You're not going to even for a moment start thinking that any of those zeniths or those verticals are diverging. You're going to treat all of them in your final calculations as parallel, because that's the whole point of it. It's a vertical height. The whole point is that it's a horizontal distance between two vertical heights. You can't have two vertical heights if one of them is not vertical. You know, these two verticals here must be parallel, must be perpendicular to this horizontal, and they must be parallel to each other, because you can't have one of them not being parallel to the other. You can't have only one being perpendicular to this horizontal, or otherwise it won't work. So you can't treat this one over here as being perpendicular to this horizontal while you're treating this one over here as being diverging. And then that is diverging to this one, this is diverging to that one. They're all diverging from each other. None of it is going to work. There won't, that mean there won't be even one. If you try and diverge all those zeniths, all those verticals, you won't even have one, not one perpendicular. How can you do this without perpendicular? You can't. These people are come up with some crazy, crazy nonsense. Here we are with the latitude or the XY and XYZ, right? XY and XYZ coordinates. This is another thing, right? These people think that you can have XY and XYZ coordinates on a globe, on the surface. You can't. It can't be done. They only work. XY is whether it's horizontal or vertical. It's a plane, right? So if we treat this horizontally, the X and the Y, right? All these, right? All these lines here, this line, this line, this line, and this line, and this line, they all must be parallel to this X axis. All those lines must be parallel to X axis. The Y is the same. All the ones that look vertical here on the screen, they all must be parallel to the Y axis. It's because this is how it works. It works in squares. So each one of these squares here, it works in rectangles and squares, but squares is the easiest way around. Each one of these here can become a smaller XY coordinates plane. And you can break that into four and have four smaller ones within that, and break each one of them into four and have four smaller ones into that. Or you can take this big one and turn that into four, right? And take four of them and make that one big one, and then have four of them and make that one even bigger one. So that's how it works. It's like the Russian dolls, where you have smaller dolls inside one big doll. If you know what I mean, that's how it works with the Russian dolls. So you can't. None of this will work if the lines are not parallel to each other. All the edges and corners and sides of these squares must meet. They must meet for it to work. This process can't work if they're not meeting. And if you add in Z, which is the vertical axis, right? Z, right, from the center point, then you're adding in a vertical 2. If this is a horizontal plane, then that has to be a total vertical. Now, if you have one of them in the center of this square, and you have another vertical in the center of this one, and this one, and this one, all those verticals have to be parallel to each other. They can't diverge because they all have to be perpendicular to these horizontal squares. It can't work any other way. So it's impossible for the XY and XYZ coordinates grid to ever work on the surface of a sphere. It cannot work. What they do is they try and make it work mathematically from a center point, but when they use XYZ from the center point of a sphere, it's all mathematical, it's not done in reality. What they do is they bring out a zenith from a center point and they build a plane around that zenith. But then if they want to bring out another zenith, right, they can't do it without making the surface of the sphere that they're using flat. So those zeniths will be parallel. Even though the zenith will be diverging to the center of their globe, the zeniths on the surface that were in the measurements in reality, they have to be parallel. So you can look at even the diagrams of this and they'll show a flat plane on the surface of a sphere because they can't do it any other way. It only works on a flat plane. Like the latitude and longitude grid, that's a flat plane coordinates. It came from flat out elevation, horizontal plane elevation angles to Polaris. That's where that comes from. None of this works without a flat plane. It can't work. It's impossible. It doesn't work over a curved surface. It doesn't work. But people like Charles would try and claim that the zeniths are diverging. So just to finish this, because it's going on a bit, here is two, right? These are in a video I made about 5 months ago. This one here, this diagram here, comes from Jesse Kozlowski and Larry Scott, right? The two false surveyors on the globe side. And this is one that was added by Blue Marble Science, right? Now, they're trying to claim diverging zeniths here. Now, I have a video coming, and I should be doing another video on this soon enough to show other things that they did here that was really fraudulent, right? Basically, they had to make their globe smaller, right? It's really funny. But the point is, they didn't do any of this. For a start, XYZ, they were using XYZ coordinates. They didn't do any of this, right? I'll link my video to show exactly what they did with how I show what they did through Metabunk and through the angular size calculator. It shows exactly what they did. Basically, what they did is they made two 90 degrees, two perpendicular, right, 90-degree angles. Here where Scott was, and here where Kozlowski was. Scott took the angular size. Now, none of this happened. They didn't actually go out and do any of this. This is all mathematics. They just claimed to do it. They never went to any of these places. They just used the mathematics. They took the angular size. He took the angular size of the hill or mountain that Kozlowski was standing on, and Kozlowski took the depression angle to Scott. That means they both had to use, right, the same perpendiculars. So these two perpendiculars here, right, were perpendicular to the same horizontal line. To do what they did, it meant that the line between Scott and the base of the mountain, and the line from Kozlowski over to Scott's zenith, right? That's four, right, perpendiculars. That's a 90-degree angle here, 90-degree angle here, 90-degree angle here, and 90-degree angle here. Never mind what's written on the screen, right, and this rubbish about how they measured more than 180 degrees. No, they did not. I show exactly what they did, and I go through all the steps of what they did and how they back engineered it into diverging zeniths. They had to use four perpendiculars with two horizontals, right? The two verticals meeting the two horizontals. That meant that both those verticals had to be parallel because they were both perpendicular to the same horizontal. So this vertical here and this vertical here, I show had to have been perpendicular to this same horizontal line between them here, and the same for Kozlowski's depression angle up here. So for Scott's angular size, right, measurement, that meant that he was using as a 90 degrees at his position and a 90 degrees at the base of the mountain that Kozlowski was standing on. That means both those verticals had to have been perpendicular to that horizontal. And when Kozlowski did the dip angle, to Scott, right, that meant that from his eye line out there, that that same exact vertical here and Scott's zenith right here, right, were perpendicular to the same horizontal. Because you can't, it's impossible to not use perpendicular to do what they did. So they needed 4 perpendiculars over a span of 11 miles to do what they did. So it's all in the video. I show how I use Metabunk to show how I use the angular size calculator and Metabunk to show how much of a fraud these people are. So Charles Flatter Math, Blue Marble Science, Jesse Kozlowski, and Larry Scott are all frauds, right? And Charles, I should call him Globert Math because I don't know what the only thing you could call him because only people who believe in the globe come up with the crazy nonsense that he comes up with. I've just shown here how he's a total liar, and if he teaches that to the young people that he teaches in high school, then he should be suspended. He should be brought to court. And if he doesn't teach it to them, then how come he's willing to claim it on the internet, but he doesn't have the confidence to teach it to them? If he believes it's true, and he says that he's a geometry and mathematics teacher. If it's true, Charles, how come if you're not teaching it, how come you're not teaching it? Because if it was true, and you believed it was true, and you knew it was true, you would be teaching it. And if you're not, it proves that you don't even believe it's true. Because you know you get in trouble for teaching lies to high school kids. And if you are teaching it, you should be in trouble for teaching lies to high school kids. Thanks for watching. It was a long video. Thank you.